You know what I miss the most? Someone remembering how I take my coffee. The voice came from the corner booth of Rosie's diner. Soft, cracked, and tired. The kind of voice that carried years of quiet mornings and empty conversations. Mara Brennan turned, the coffee pot in her hand pausing midair. For a second, her practiced smile faltered. She'd worked here for 6 years. Long enough to tell when a sentence carried more weight than the words themselves. The old man sat where he always did, near the window where the morning sun spilled across the table. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to unfold a newspaper that looked older than he did. It wasn't really about reading anymore. It was about remembering how to start the day. 2 sugars, no cream, Mara said gently, filling his cup. The old man blinked, surprised. And you fold the sports section first, she added. Even though you always read the obituaries. He looked up slowly, his pale blue eyes glistening. You noticed, he whispered. Everyone deserves to be noticed, Mr. Finch. That was 4 months ago. Since then, Walter Finch had become part of her mornings, just as the smell of bacon and the clatter of cups had. Every day at 7:15 sharp, he'd shuffle through the diner door in his oversized cardigan and carefully polished shoes. He never ordered much, scrambled eggs, toast, and that same cup of coffee, but he always left a $5 tip on an $8 bill. Mara learned his story not by asking, but by listening. His wife, Dorothy, had died 3 years earlier. His only son lived in Seattle, too busy for calls that lasted more than 2 minutes. His grandson visited occasionally, always distracted, always glancing at his phone. I don't blame him, Walter had said one morning, his voice steady but hollow. People have lives. I'm just in between chapters now, waiting for the epilogue. Mara reached out and touched his wrinkled hand. Maybe you're not at the end, Mr. Finch. Maybe the next chapter just hasn't been written yet. She meant it. Maybe because she knew what loneliness looked like. She'd seen it in her mother's eyes when illness took everything from them, including Mara's college dreams. So she did small things for Walter. She saved the morning newspaper before the rush, kept his booth open no matter how busy it got, and made sure the coffee pot reached his table first. On his birthday, which he'd mentioned just once, she brought him a slice of apple pie with a single candle. Walter cried openly that day. You're the only one who remembered, he said softly. But Mara noticed other things too. His hands shook more each week. His voice grew weaker. Sometimes he repeated stories without realizing. And his clothes began to hang looser. Then one Tuesday he didn't show up. The diner felt wrong. The air heavier. The corner booth too empty. By evening, Mara couldn't take it anymore. She found his address in the phone book, an old habit for an old soul, and drove there after her shift. The house was small, neat, and heartbreakingly quiet. Walter opened the door wearing pajamas and embarrassment. I fell, he admitted. Nothing broken, just tired, Mara. So tired. She started visiting after work. She'd bring groceries, read him the paper when his eyes couldn't focus, make soup when he refused to cook. Her manager complained about her hours. But Mara didn't stop, because Walter had no one, and she knew what it meant to feel unseen. One evening, Walter asked, Why do you do this? You don't owe me anything. Mara tucked the blanket around him, blinking back tears. Because someone should. Because you matter. Kindness isn't something we give when it's easy. It's something we give because we're human. 3 weeks later, Walter died peacefully in his sleep. Mara found out when the hospice nurse called. He had listed her as his emergency contact. She stood in the diner kitchen for 20 minutes, crying until her hands shook, mourning a man who'd become family without either of them meaning to. The funeral was small, just the nurse, 3 neighbors, and Mara. As the service ended, a man in an expensive suit rushed in, late and out of breath. He held a phone in one hand, guilt in the other. I'm Marcus Finch, he said. Walter's grandson. Where is everyone? Mara's voice trembled, but her eyes didn't waver. You're looking at everyone. We're all he had. Marcus swallowed hard. I was busy. I had work. He died alone, Mara said quietly, waiting for someone to remember he existed. Marcus didn't reply. He left as quickly as he came, and Mara thought that was the end. Another story that would fade away quietly, like Walter's morning coffee steam. But 2 weeks later, Marcus returned, this time to the diner with 2 lawyers. Mara's stomach sank. She'd heard of families fighting over estates, money, houses, pieces of a life that didn't belong to them. "Miss Brennan," one of the lawyers said, "we need to speak with you about Mr. Finch's will." Mara's voice shook. "I don't want anything. I just wanted him to feel like he mattered." Marcus stepped forward, his eyes different now, softer, almost ashamed. "My grandfather left you the house," he said. "But that's not why we're here. He left me a letter. The lawyer says I should read it with you present." They sat in Walter's old booth, the same one where he'd once said he missed being remembered. Marcus opened the yellowed envelope, hands trembling. He began to read aloud. "Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't blame you for being busy. Life is demanding and I was just an old man. But I want you to know about Mara Brennan. She's a waitress who makes $8 an hour plus tips. She has nothing extra to give. Yet every day, she gave me everything that mattered. Her time, her attention, her heart. She remembered my coffee. She remembered my birthday. She saw me when I had become invisible to everyone else, including you. I'm leaving her the house because she gave me something worth more than property. She gave me dignity in my final chapter. Learn from her, Marcus. Success means nothing if you're too busy to love people. Wealth means nothing if you forget how someone takes their coffee. Be better than I was. Be more like Mara." Marcus's voice cracked. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he folded the letter carefully, his hand trembling. "I spent so long trying to make him proud," he whispered, "that I forgot to just be with him." Mara's eyes glistened. "He knew you loved him, Marcus. He just needed to feel it." Marcus nodded slowly. "Teach me," he said. "Teach me how to see people the way you saw him." What happened next no one in Rosie's diner expected. Marcus started showing up every morning. Not in suits or for business calls, but to sit, listen, and learn. He began remembering customers' names, their favorite meals, their stories. He visited the senior center Walter had once mentioned but never joined, too proud to admit he was lonely. And somewhere between the coffee refills and quiet conversations, Marcus and Mara built something new. Not romance born out of grief, but friendship rooted in purpose. Together, they turned Walter's old house into something beautiful. A community space for elders who had nowhere to go. A place where loneliness could no longer grow unnoticed. They called it Walter's Corner. And every morning, the smell of fresh coffee filled the rooms where silence once lived. People came, widows, veterans, retired teachers, strangers who had stopped being seen. They came to talk, to laugh, to remember. 1 year after Walter's passing, Mara stood at the grand opening, tears in her eyes as the hall filled with chatter and warmth. Beside her, Marcus whispered, "Do you think he knows? That he changed everything?" Mara smiled softly. "I think he always knew one act of kindness could change a life. He just needed someone to remind him." An elderly woman approached, holding a cup. "Excuse me, dear," she said. "How do you take your coffee?" Mara's breath caught. 2 sugars, no cream. The woman smiled. "I'll remember that. Everyone deserves to be remembered." And in that moment, Mara understood what Walter had been trying to tell her all along. That we're not here to be remembered by history or fame or monuments. We're here to be remembered by each other. In the small things, in the gentle gestures, in the way we make someone feel seen. Because sometimes it's not about grand gestures or money or gifts. Sometimes it's about remembering how someone takes their coffee and reminding them they still matter. If the story touched your heart, don't scroll away. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a little kindness today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of what truly matters. Love, compassion, and the power of being seen.